Witam Państwa serdecznie na 60. Krakowskim Festiwalu Filmowym, który się odbywa w tym roku online. Witam Cię, Arturze, ponownie. Już po raz kolejny prowadzisz spotkanie z twórcą. A dzisiaj mamy twórcę wyjątkowego, którego film otwierał fokus na Danię. Dania jest w tym roku krajem, który zaprosiliśmy jako gościa specjalnego i w programie duńskim obejrzeć można filmy dokumentalne i krótkometrażowe, a film u Barbera wybraliśmy na otwarcie, żeby pokazać ten kraj od środka i mam nadzieję, że się Państwu spodobało. A teraz już hello, Emil. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Yes, super. Thank you for being with us here at the Krakow Film Festival. It's a pity you couldn't come, but I'm sure that the Q&A with you will be very interesting. So, Artur, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, as Basia said, we have Emil Langballe with us, the director of the film Q's Barbershop. Hello, Emil. Nice to have you here.
Hello, thanks for having me.
I would like to start with the question that is actually not super connected with the movie, because I'm super curious, what did you learn by staying with the guys in the barbershop for so long? So as you see me for the first time, what can you say about my hairstyle? What kind of person am I?
Oh, I think it's an interesting hairstyle. I haven't seen it before, especially that twirl that is like with another color. I guess you're somebody that care about your hair and you spend some time, like working on it every morning. I don't know what more to say. I'm not the expert. The barber could probably say 1,000 things. I think that he would probably think that you should be a little more sharp, especially in the neck and on the sides. In Volsmose, where the film takes place, long hair is not kind of very admired. They like it very sharp and they cut it almost every week.
So you learned really a lot by staying with these great people and this great character. Actually, I have to start with the obvious question, because I was so curious about how did you find this guy? Like, when did you decide to make a film about him? What was the circumstances that allowed you to start this great adventure?
So my mom used to be a school teacher in that area for almost 30 years. And my dad, when I was very young, also worked in the kindergarten out there. So I used to come there quite a lot, and I spent a lot of time with the children in my own age. And I have a lot of like warm and nice memories from Volsmose. And then we moved from the other area, and I grew up, and I read a lot of really negative stories about the place in the media. And I never really kind of was able to kind of put those my early memories and this kind of current situation together. And it always disturbed me. And when I became older and started making documentaries, I always wanted to make something about Volsmose and to give voice to these people that were often like really kind of stigmatized in the media. But it was not only before I never really found an interesting venue or the kind of right like microcosm in a way before I met Hasim, and I read about him in a Danish newspaper. Actually, there was a really good photographer, a Danish newspaper photographer, who had made these really lovely portraits of the guys in the shop just after they had their hair cut. And there was this, like really lovely sculptural quality to the hair, but also I felt it how do you say, there was a lot of dignity and and joy in those pictures that I felt, and warmth that I felt was kind of went very well with how I remembered Volsmose. So I felt maybe this was the place to go and make a film. And I called him up, and he invited me to the salon, and he let me spend one day there. And I was there for like 10 minutes, and then Elias, the other main character, comes into the door, and he looked like a bit like Snoop Dogg, and he had this nice way of walking and kind of a swag. And then he started cleaning the floor, for hair. And then after that, he demanded a free haircut for his services, And they had such a nice like kind of dynamic and a way of teasing each other. And I was like, okay. Already after 15 minutes, I was pretty sure there was a film there just in that relationship, but also in the very warm atmosphere that Hasim has created for his customers, and these red walls and this kind of almost like an atmosphere from a Spike Lee film, and the sculptural quality of the hair and all that stuff kind of really attracted me to the place, and the generosity and the way they welcomed me as well. So that's how it all started.
And how Hassim and the other guys, how did they react in the moment when white filmmaker, white documentarist is going into the barbershop that actually has mostly black customers? How did they react for that?
I mean, I was kind of, I was thinking a lot about how to approach it, and I thought maybe I'm not going to be like, how do you say, too aggressive in my communication. So in the beginning, I was just sitting there observing, and I let them come to me, and they were all very curious, like, what, as you say, what the hell is this white guy doing in our neighborhood and in this salon, and why is he here every day? Because I was hanging out there for a long time, like almost 1.5 years on and off before we shot anything. I was just hanging out and talking to them. And they started asking me, and I told them about my idea and how I wanted to portray Volsmose differently than before in the media, but also how I wanted to make a film about sharp haircuts, and the atmosphere in there, and all the great characters that I feel came in the door. And they, in the beginning, they were like a little bit skeptical, but they saw how persistent I was, that I kept coming back. And in the end, they, I think, treated me as like an equal customer. And I think it also helped that I had my hair cut regularly in the salon. You cannot see it now, it's overgrown because I haven't been there for a while, but I think I'll go back in a couple of days to get it done again. But I think that it helped that they saw me as a regular customer and as a guy just coming back and back and back again and again and again. And I gained their trust. And then when we actually shot the film, I knew all of the characters very well. So I think this 1.5 year of, kind of research and just hanging out there really did the job in that respect.
I have to tell you that I was pretty shocked by your documentary, because apparently I know about Volsmose. I mostly know about this neighborhood. I mostly know about this district because of the media. And as you mentioned, the media, even in Poland, depict it as something completely dangerous, as a place full of crime. So actually, when I heard about your film and when I watched it, I assumed that these guys, they're going to talk about only this place, that it's going to be political, that it's going to be like, super comment on and socially involved. And then it turned out that actually they talk about very emotional aspects of their life. They talk about relationships, about emotions, about what they feel. I was just curious, how was it possible? Didn't they want to input some message into your film? Did they want to, have impact on how it looks like and bring some message? How did it look like?
Actually, I think they didn't, because I think they're tired of this discussion, and they're tired of always talking about either being victims or being like perpetrators in some criminal way, And actually, they felt, okay, we're actually just normal people, and here's a chance for us to get to talk about more like universal topics like love and employment and stuff like that. But then, and also from the beginning, I was not so interested in asking them about that when we were just talking in the salon. But then the film turned into I wouldn't say it turned into a political film, but a political layer emerged, because when I was hanging out there and when we were shooting the film, then people started talking about tearing Volsmose down, and it became very real for them. And then they started to kind of, discuss politics and politicians and being kind of feeling alienated and being stigmatized. But before that happened, they were actually not interested so much in talking about politics, but more about just life in general, because I feel that they feel that they've always been politicized in a way in media, and they've been either looked at as victims or as criminals. And I think most of them, they don't feel like they're any of those. They really love their home, they really like living there, and they just want to get on with life like anybody else.
So we can tell that one of your motivation was definitely fighting with stereotypes, but it's not only fighting with stereotypes in terms of Volsmose, but it's also fighting with stereotypes about toxic masculinity, I would say. I wouldn't expect that in the barbershop only guys can talk so much about emotions and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but true, no, about masculinity and about, what is, what is it to be a man in this kind of atmosphere? And and what does it mean to have a space where you can express yourself freely. I was very envious about that when I started to make the film. That where I live in Copenhagen, I barely talk to my neighbors, and they don't talk to me. But here in Vollsmose, you have such a strong sense of community, and especially in the barbershop, it was almost like an extended living room where they could come and share any kind of issues they had. And I felt that's something that we've kind of lost in the West, and in the big cities. This kind of space where you can use each other, for the good. And I think they really had that, and they really have that there. And Kasim kind of created the space, and I think he also did that because he misses this, kind of from Somalia, this tradition of hanging out on a stoop and expressing ideas together in the evening. It's something that you rarely see in like traditional Danish communities, at least, anymore.
But even though you decided to leave some very politically incorrect sense of humor in the film, there is a few jokes, there is few opinions that we could say that are even misogynic. Weren't you afraid that leaving that kind of jokes and leaving that kind of discussion can bring some negative shadow on your characters?
Yes, I was afraid, but I was also afraid that the opposite would happen, that people would feel that it was just kind of like a too glossy painting that I was painting, because these issues are there and they are real, so I felt that, I had to dose it carefully, but I couldn't just leave it out because that would be like dishonest in a way. So it was a kind of careful balance in the edit to be fair to the characters, but also not to exclude everything that is, kind of problematic just because it's problematic. But to assure that, of course, there are issues, but of course there are like, challenges, but they're still like human beings who are trying, to do the best with what they have, I think.
And actually, I was curious as well about how did you pick the customers that you want to live in the film? Did they? What were their reactions? Like, did you have to get any permission? Did you have to authorize your film with them, or did they just give you the free will and you could do whatever you wanted in the editing?
So I think, they gave me like total freedom, but I think they only did that because they knew me so well, because I've been there for such a long time. So I had done a lot of recordings with a little camera, like kind of research material, and me and the editor, we would, every time I returned from like a research trip there, we would look at all the rushes of the footage and see who we found interesting. Then I would make a long list and I would gather them for the shoot, but I would also keep the the salon open for just surprises. So some of my favorite scenes in there about people just walking in that I had never met before. For instance, the guy that was just released from jail, I never met him before, and I could sense that he had something to say, and he really wanted to talk about his time in jail with Qasim and his kind of hopelessness and being in there. But other things planned for the film, but where I would still just let them talk. But I had an idea about what they would talk about because I knew them and I knew what would take up, space in their minds. So it was kind of like a combination of, more like stage stuff and then like total kind of, random things happening because we were just keeping the shop open. But also, everybody who went into the shop had to sign a release form beforehand, before they could go in there, and then they were mic'd up. So we had like a sound guy, outside the shop with like, I think 12 different channels running the mics all the time in order to get good quality sound. So it was kind of like a bit of a hassle sometimes, because also when people from Vollsmose heard that we were recording a film, like other people that I hadn't met, like people would line up and would try to get into the shop. So it was sometimes a bit difficult to manage. Was that an answer to your question? I hope.
Definitely, Wes. I was also curious if the portrait of Volmos can be considered through your film. Like, is Volmos actually one of these areas when you can have a life and you can feel safe, or maybe it's only the barbershop that looks so positively, and going outside is going to another reality?
That's a very good question, and of course, it's difficult for me to answer because this is kind of like my subjective, gaze on Volsmose, and my subjective impression. But I do think that, I mean, I've spent quite a big amount of time there, and I've never ever felt unsafe. And I've been walking around the blocks, and I've been hanging out with people, and I still do that, and I still feel like it's a warm and welcoming place, and it has a villagey feel that I do really like. So I think the film is honest, and I do think that the picture painted in the media is very much exaggerated. Of course, there are a few like bad apples that do some bad stuff, and but in general, it's not a dangerous place, and you rarely see most of the crime there is like gang related. You rarely see like innocent people getting targeted. So I do think it's quite an honest picture. And as you can see in the film, there, like we have some good guys and some and some troublemakers also. And I think the percentage of those in the film is pretty fair. Yeah.
And do you have any information about what's going to happen to Volmos? What is the plan of the Danish government, Danish authorities? We can see in the film that actually they were planning to remove the ghetto, and Volmos is considered as a ghetto. So what is the plan like? What is the status right now?
So I think now it's like almost 10,000 people living there, and I think that it's 3,000 to 4,000 are going to have to move because they want to tear down a lot of homes and buildings and make it like more spacious, and then build like more expensive apartments for like in order to attract kind of more well-off people, and then in that way change it from like kind of a ghetto to like a more like kind of typical middle-class housing area. But I don't know how it will go now. It's because of the corona crisis, they've put everything on hold. But I have heard that according to plan, in the fall, they will start demolishing the first buildings. And I know a lot of people who have gotten letters of like eviction, and they have to get rehousing somewhere else. But I do think that the authorities, they have a big problem now trying to find this rehousing, because it's a lot of people and they don't have so many apartments vacant in that area in Odense in Denmark. So it's kind of, the plan is there, and all the political will behind it is there, but people still don't know what will happen when it's put into effect.
We have some questions from the audience. To everybody who are watching us right now, I just want to remind you that you can ask your question. I'm receiving it here on my cell phone and can ask it to our guest. So the first question is, do you have any information how Hassem is doing during the times of coronavirus? How is his barbershop doing now?
So I was visiting him a few weeks ago. First, when I was there, he had to close the main entrance, and he could only admit people through the back, and it was only like one person in the salon at a time, and he was wearing the thing, and and everybody had to do hand sanitizer and stuff. But then a couple of weeks ago, I think in Denmark here, they allowed for hairdressers to open. First, actually, he was totally closed. Sorry. He was not allowed to have open at all. But then a couple of weeks ago, he could have one customer at a time, and I think now it's 10 customers in the salon. But they have to, of course, be careful with the sanitation of the hands and all that stuff. So he's doing okay, but he lost a lot of money, and he was really depressed at a time. But then the government also came with an economic like support package that for hairdressers, because they were one of the professions that were hit the hardest, and it helped him be able to pay one of his employees and keep the salon kind of rolling, and also to kind of feed his family. So he's all right, but he lost some money, and he's gonna have to work a lot harder when all this is over.
But it's good to hear that his barbershop survived. Let's keep our fingers crossed that everything's going to be okay. The next question is from Małgorzata. The question is, can you describe how work with music of the film looked like?
Yeah, so I was kind of, that was a big, challenge. First, I thought that it would have to be like contemporary hip hop, because that's what all the guys in the salon are listening to, but it was kind of not Hasim's music. He's more like a soul kind of guy. And also I felt that it was a bit too cold for the like warm atmosphere that was in the salon. And I'm a big fan of Spike Lee and his like early films and like Do the Right Thing and those kind of films. And I felt like maybe we should find something that was a bit more timeless, where you actually didn't know. It could be, the Barbershop could be in Voldsmose, but it could also be in New York in the 70s or 80s. And I started to look a lot at like soul and jazz scores. And I worked with the composer to develop the score that is written for the film, especially, and inspired by like both soul classics, but also like kind of more like experimental jazz and stuff like that. So yeah, we tried to aim for like a very warm and like generous kind of feeling, where you could really feel like that you were invited into the salon. But also, of course, it should be something that had to do with Black culture and like this kind of proud, feeling of being Black, and the hairstyles and all that stuff. So we focused a lot on that.
Mm-hmm. The next question is a question from Gosia. What was the setup when the camera was often straight in front of the characters? How was it made?
Yeah, that's a good question that we also really focused on, was how to shoot in a barbershop. Well, when there are so many mirrors, but we still wanted to have eye contact, and we wanted to look people directly in the eyes, because I felt that when these people of Voldsmose, when they are mentioned in the media, they are often just dehumanized and like portrayed as numbers or like graphs or statistics. But we wanted to look them directly into the eyes and show that they're like the same as us, the audience. So we found this mirror that is called a 50% mirror. That is, if you put like some black molten around it and it's completely dark where the camera is, and light comes from the other side, you can actually shoot directly through the mirror, and it would be like a mirror on the other side, and people will not see the camera. So they were looking at themselves getting a haircut, but they were actually getting filmed through the mirror, and that helped us a lot also to kind of make them relax more and be like more natural, because they would often forget the camera. And I would stand behind that construction, and then sometimes I would stick my head out and I would like ask questions or ask them to like to dig more into some kind of conversation that they had, and they would sometimes get really surprised, like, oh, there was a camera there, there's a guy there, yeah. But of course they knew they were getting filmed, but they would get sucked into the conversation, and they would sometimes forget. And I think that worked very nicely. So yeah, that was a big part of the whole development of the visual style of the film, to get that mirror to work, and to make us being able to shoot through it.
But it's good to know that actually we should be careful when we are in the barbershop, because we can have camera outside of the mirror. The next question is a question from the next question is the question from Błażej. What was the weirdest hairstyle that Hassam made on your hair?
That somebody made on my hair?
Hassam made on your hair.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, we had some difficulties in the beginning, because I wanted something completely different than he was used to making. And also he's not so used to cutting just like really plain like hair that is not curly. So he would basically just give me like really kind of almost completely removed here on the sides, and then like a fade up, and then short on the top. Basically like all the guys in their had, but it would just look really weird on me because I was so white under my hair that people would almost be blinded when they saw me. I think I looked like an overgrown baby with a weird haircut.
So he's still your hairdresser. You still go to his salon.
Definitely, and now he completely understands my taste. I just tell him, Rasim, please cut my hair and make it look like that it's not just been cut right now. And yeah, he thinks that's totally ridiculous, but he does it anyway.
Okay. The next question is the question about how Hassam reacted for the film. What was his reaction? What was his emotions?
He really loved it, and he was really touched by it, and he's just really grateful to me. And he already asked me if we could do like a sequel. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure we should do that. I kind of like to leave it as it is for now. But yeah, he's proud, and I heard that he also showed it to like all his relatives in Somalia. Somehow they sent it down there, and the poster is hanging in Mogadishu also at some local hairdressers. So yeah, he loved it.
And actually, during watching your film, I was just curious how he's considered by his homies in his area, because for me, he's even like some kind of a teacher for them. He's like a guy that actually you go to get some advice, you go to share something that is in your soul. It's actually like a priest, a teacher, and a colleague in one time.
Yeah, I mean, they respect him a lot. I think also because, as we kind of mentioned briefly in the film, he also he's experienced a lot of stuff, and he lived, on the street when he was younger, and he had to take care of himself. And I think that gives him a lot of respect in the area. But I also just think that the fact that he's made this salon from scratch and that he's making money makes him a role model and somebody that they look up to, so they can ask him any kind of advice and he will readily answer. And yeah, I think he has a crucial role in Valsmose, also keeping like youngsters out of crime. He knows everything what's going on because of his salon, and people will tell him stuff when they get their hair done. So he has kind of like he has a great eye for like troublemakers and who is kind of getting into trouble, and he will he will teach them a lesson, or he will go to their parents and he will watch them. So he has and still they love him. He has this kind of wonderful way of doing that where people will still like him, even though he can also sometimes be a little bit tough on them.
Unfortunately, we are running out of time, but before we finish, I would like to ask you one more question. This is the question from Gostia. The question is, Hasim seems happy with his job throughout the film, but at the end of the film, he looked dissatisfied. Why is that?
I mean, I think because he's doing the best he can, but something he still deals with in Denmark is this constant kind of structural racism where, he's never going to be seen as Danish, even though he's doing everything he can to be integrated, and he's doing everything he can for his community. He's doing everything he can to to have his business running and pay taxes and all that stuff. But people are still viewing him as an immigrant and as a potential troublemaker. And I think that's kind of what wears him down. And when then in the film, as you see, when the politicians start to kind of talk about tearing Valsmose down and demolishing it, I think it becomes too much for him. And he just wishes to be somewhere else where he can blend in with people and where he can live a normal life without being stigmatized. And that's, I think, why he seems so tired in the end. And of course also because it's a tough job he has to cut 30 people a day and at the same time be some kind of superhuman, he's giving all this advice, he's trying to deal with sometimes troublemakers coming into his salon demanding stuff, some of the stuff that you see through the film. And I think it's kind of tiresome, but he still loves his job so much, and that's what I try to say in that voiceover in the end, where we hear that he still gets a lot of pleasure of watching, walking through Valsmose at night and see all these kind of really cool haircuts that he created, and he told me that it's something that I I've written, but from his own words, and that's what gives him this fuel to continue. That he gives people dignity and like a kind of lust for life, that I think Volsmose would be a different place without him.
And thanks to your film, I believe the image of Hassan can also change. You also gave him the dignity, and you definitely helped to change his image. He's the great human, not an immigrant, as he's considered by the other people. So, Emil, thank you so much for being here. Emil Langbal, the director of the Q's Barbershop, was our guest. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here with us. Apparently, we invite you to the rest of our screenings. There is a lot of films that are worth to see, and apparently there's going to be a lot more Q&A sessions, so please just check what's going on at the 60th Krakow Film Festival. Thank you so much. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.